They thought I was just another replaceable employee. They were wrong. To save a few $100s on my final paycheck, they triggered something that would bring their entire empire crashing down. The irony. The only lifeline that could save them from complete destruction was now in my hands. After 15 years of building their flagship products, they'd forgotten one crucial detail: the fine print matters. And sometimes, the smallest clause in an old contract can become a nuclear weapon. This is how I turned their greed into my greatest triumph. My name is Natalie Brooks, and for 15 years, I poured my soul into medtech innovations. That Tuesday morning started like any other coffee brewing in the break room. The familiar hum of 3D printers in the design lab, engineers debating material specifications. At 9:30 sharp, my assistant knocked on my door with an expression I'd never seen before. "They want you in conference room A," she whispered, her eyes darting away. The glass-walled conference room sat at the heart of our Denver headquarters, a fishbowl where everyone could witness whatever drama unfolded inside. As head of product design, I'd presented countless prototypes in that room, defended budgets, celebrated launches, but today, only one person waited inside Ethan Drake. Ethan, 28 years old, MBA from Wharton that his grandfather's donations had secured, and a smile that never reached his eyes. He joined 6 months ago as strategic advisor, a title everyone knew meant heir apparent, the nephew of our CEO, groomed to take over once his uncle retired. He sat at the head of the table, my usual spot during design reviews, drumming his manicured fingers on a single manila folder. "Natalie," he said, not bothering to stand. "Please, sit." I remained standing. "What's this about, Ethan?" He opened the folder with theatrical precision, sliding a document across the polished table. "Effective immediately. We're restructuring the design department. Your position has been eliminated." The words hung in the air like poison gas. 15 years. 15 years of 60-hour weeks, of fighting for every innovation, of building the products that made this company worth $2 billion. My hands stayed steady, but I felt my pulse hammering in my throat. "Restructuring," I repeated, tasting the corporate euphemism. "And who exactly will be taking over the 17 active projects my team is running?" "We're bringing in fresh perspective, someone who understands modern efficiency." He leaned back, that practiced smile spreading wider. "You know how it is sometimes. Companies need to shed dead weight to stay competitive." Dead weight. The woman who designed the flex stent that captured 40% of the market. Dead weight. "I see." I picked up the termination letter, scanning the details. "And my compensation. Your final paycheck will be direct deposited Friday, $3,850. He pronounced each word with deliberate emphasis, as if the amount itself was part of the humiliation. "We've calculated it down to the hour. Generous, considering we could have termed you for cause given recent budget overruns." Budget overruns. My department had come in under budget for 3 consecutive years, but I didn't argue. I simply folded the letter and placed it in my blazer pocket. "Security will escort you to clean out your desk," Ethan continued, checking his Rolex. "You have 30 minutes. Company property stays. Naturally. Laptop, keycard, any prototypes or design files." "Naturally," I echoed. He stood then, smoothing his Italian suit. "Oh, and Natalie. The non-compete clause remains in effect for 2 years, just so we're clear." As he reached the door, he paused for his final performance. "You know, if you'd been more adaptable to new leadership, this might have gone differently, but some people just can't evolve with the times." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone in the fishbowl. Through the glass, I could see my colleagues pretending not to stare, their faces a mixture of shock and fear. Who would be next? But as I stood there, something Arthur Miles had told me years ago surfaced in my memory. The company's founder, now long retired, had pulled me aside after I'd received my 5th patent approval. "Natalie," he'd said, his weathered hands gripping mine. "Promise me something, if they ever treat you as less than you're worth. Remember, I made sure you'd have options." At the time, I thought he meant my reputation, my portfolio. Now, staring at that insultingly precise final paycheck amount, $3,850, a different possibility began to take shape. They wanted to save money by cutting my salary to nothing. They had no idea what that number would actually cost them. The security guard, Marcus, walked 3 feet behind me as I made my way back to my office. We'd shared coffee breaks for years, talked about his daughter's college applications, but now he couldn't meet my eyes. The entire floor had gone silent, that particular corporate silence where everyone types louder to prove they're working, terrified they might be next. I passed the design lab where my team huddled around their monitors. Heads down. Sarah, my lead engineer, started to stand, but I shook my head slightly. Not now. Not with Marcus watching. The 3D printer was still running my latest prototype iteration, a new catheter design that would have revolutionized minimally invasive surgery. By tomorrow, someone else would claim credit for those 18 months of development. My former office overlooked downtown Denver, the mountains visible on clear days. 15 years of memories lined these walls. The framed patent certificates, each one a battle won. The photo with Arthur Miles at the company's 20th anniversary. His arm around my shoulder as he called me the future of medtech. The prototype of our first breakthrough product, the Flex Stent, displayed in its custom acrylic case. My Design Queen coffee mug, a joke gift from my team after I'd pulled 3 all-nighters to fix a critical flaw before FDA submission. Marcus shifted uncomfortably by the door. 30 minutes, Ms. Brooks. I nodded, pulling out the cardboard box they'd so thoughtfully provided. Standard termination theater. Make it visible. Make it humiliating. Make sure everyone sees what happens when you don't play ball with new management. Into the box went the personal items. The photo of my late husband, taken 2 years before the cancer. My MIT diploma, not that credentials mattered anymore. The small cactus my daughter had given me when she was 12, insisting it would survive anything, just like you, Mom. But I left the patents on the wall. Let them serve as ghosts, reminders of what built this company. 23 minutes in, I found what I was really looking for, buried in my desk's bottom drawer, beneath old conference badges and expired business cards, was a folder marked Original Employment Agreement, 2009. Inside, amended contracts, stock options paperwork, and there clipped to the back a single page I'd almost forgotten existed. Amendment to Intellectual Property Agreement, dated 3 years into my employment. Arthur's signature at the bottom, along with mine and a notary seal. My hands trembled slightly as I read the crucial paragraph. In the event that the employee's base compensation falls below $4,000 per month, whether through termination, reduction in force, or any other circumstance, all patents, designs, and intellectual property created by the employee during their tenure shall immediately revert to the employee's sole ownership, including but not limited to all existing and pending patents, trade secrets, and proprietary designs. $4,000 per month. My final paycheck, $3,850. Arthur, you brilliant, paranoid bastard. He'd insisted on this clause after watching another company gut their R&D team to boost quarterly profits. Insurance, he'd called it, for the people who actually build things. I slipped the document into my purse, not the cardboard box. Marcus wouldn't check my purse that would cross a line even Ethan wouldn't dare authorize. 5 minutes, Marcus announced. I picked up the box, taking one last look around. On my desk calendar, still displaying this week's meetings I'd never attend: FDA review prep, supplier negotiations, the quarterly innovation summit where I was supposed to present our 5-year pipeline. As we walked back through the design floor, the silence felt different now. Not the silence of fear, but of mourning. These people knew what Ethan didn't, that I wasn't just a department head. I was the institutional memory, the one who knew why certain suppliers could never be trusted, which FDA reviewers had hidden agendas, how to navigate the undocumented quirks of our manufacturing process. At the elevator, Sarah broke protocol. She stepped out from her cubicle, walked straight up to me despite Marcus's warning look, and hugged me tight. "This is bullshit," she whispered. "Keep your head down," I whispered back. "For now." The elevator doors opened. As I stepped inside with my pathetic cardboard box, I caught a glimpse of Ethan standing in the executive hallway, watching. He gave a small wave, that smug smile plastered across his face. The doors closed, and I began to smile too. Not the broken smile of the defeated, but the quiet, dangerous smile of someone who knows something others don't. They thought they were saving money. In exactly 30 days, they'd learn what that savings actually cost. The parking garage felt like a tomb at 11:45 a.m. My Tesla sat alone in what used to be my reserved spot senior management. Level 2. Tomorrow it would probably hold Ethan's latest Porsche. I placed the cardboard box in the trunk, then sat in the driver's seat, staring at the concrete wall where someone had spray-painted "corporate lies" months ago. Maintenance kept painting over it, but it always bled through. I pulled out the amendment document again. Reading it in the dim garage light, the memory rushed back with perfect clarity. Arthur's corner office. Autumn 2012. The aspens outside turning gold. "I need you to sign something," he'd said, pushing the paper across his massive oak desk. I'd just received FDA approval for the Flex stent, our first billion-dollar product. The champagne was still cold in the conference room where the team was celebrating. "What is it?" I'd asked, scanning the legal language. "Insurance," Arthur had said, his blue eyes serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm 73. Natalie, I won't be here forever. When I'm gone, the vultures will circle. My brother's kid, Donald, he's already pushing to bring his son into the company. Ethan, kid's got an MBA and the moral compass of a piranha. Arthur, this clause, if my salary drops below $4,000 a month, I get everything that seems extreme." He'd leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking. "I built this company on innovation, not financial engineering. The products you design, the patents you file, they're the real value here. Without them, medtech is just expensive real estate and some factory equipment." "But the board would never agree to this." Arthur had smiled then, the kind of smile that reminded you he'd built a $2 billion company from nothing. "The board doesn't need to know. This is an amendment to your original employment agreement, which gives me sole discretion over IP arrangements for key personnel. Completely legal, completely binding, and completely invisible unless triggered." "Why $4,000? "Because that's less than we pay junior engineers. If they ever value you at less than that, they deserve what happens next." I'd signed it, we'd toasted with champagne, and I'd filed it away, never imagining it would matter. Now, sitting in my car, I pulled up my banking app. The direct deposit was scheduled for Friday. $3,850, $150 below the threshold. They'd been so precise, so proud of calculating my final payment down to the hour. They had no idea they'd calculated themselves into disaster. I drove straight to Wells Fargo on 17th Street. The branch manager, Janet, knew me from years of business accounts. "Natalie, how are things at MedTech?" "Taking a new direction," I said carefully. "I need to deposit this when it arrives Friday." I showed her the termination letter with the exact amount. She raised an eyebrow. "Terminated, after all these years. New management, new vision." I kept my voice neutral. "I need the deposit time-stamped and documented, every detail official." "Of course." She started typing. "Will you be moving your retirement accounts?" "Not yet, but I need certified copies of this deposit when it processes. Legal reasons." Janet nodded knowingly. Corporate terminations often led to lawsuits. My next stop was David Mercer's law office in the Denver Tech Center. David had handled my husband's estate. My parents' trusts he knew how to keep secrets and move quietly. "Natalie," he said, rising from behind his desk, "this is unexpected." I handed him the amendment, watched his eyes widen as he read. "Holy shit," he breathed, then caught himself. "Pardon my language. Is this authenticated, notarized, and about to be triggered?" I showed him the termination letter. "My final paycheck is $3,850. The threshold is $4,000. David read both documents again, slower this time. Arthur Miles was either paranoid or prophetic. "Both. Can you handle this?" "Handle it." David actually laughed. "Natalie, this is going to be beautiful. 27 patents, including the Flex stent, the microcath series, the new ablation system. Without those patents, MedTech can't manufacture their core products. They'll have to either license them from you or shut down production. I want to wait 30 days. Let the termination become fully effective. Let them think they've won. Smart. No chance of them claiming clerical error or trying to reverse it. David pulled out a legal pad, started writing. We'll file with the USPTO the morning of day 31. Request immediate transfer of all patents to your name. Since this is a contractual reversion, not a sale or transfer, it's automatic. What about the products already in production? They'll owe you retroactive licensing fees from the date of termination, at market rates. That's, he pulled out a calculator, conservative estimate, 7 figures annually, plus penalties for unlicensed use. I stood to leave, then turned back. David, they're going to panic. They'll throw everything at reversing this. Let them try. He held up the amendment. This is ironclad. Arthur Miles didn't just protect you. Natalie, he handed you a nuclear weapon. The next 30 days required Oscar-worthy performance art. I became a ghost in my own life, invisible but watching everything. David had been clear. Don't give them any reason to suspect. No contact with former colleagues. No social media posts. Nothing that suggests you're anything but a defeated ex-employee. So I played the part, updated my LinkedIn to seeking new opportunities, posted a generic thank you message about grateful for my time at MedTech that collected sympathetic reactions from industry contacts who had no idea what was coming. I even attended a few networking events. Smiled sadly when people asked about my sudden departure. Said things like, sometimes change is necessary, with just the right touch of wounded dignity. But every night, I worked with David on our strategy. We need everything documented, he said during our third meeting at his office. The conference table was covered with papers, patent filings, employment contracts, production records I'd saved over the years. When they realize what's happened, they'll claim fraud, coercion, that you somehow manipulated Arthur into this agreement. Arthur was the sharpest mind I've ever known, I said. Nobody manipulated him into anything. We know that, but Ethan's first move will be character assassination. David pulled up MedTech's latest quarterly report on his laptop. Look at this, they're projecting 20% growth based on the new catheter line. Your catheter line. The design they'd stolen from my desk. Sarah had texted me from a burner phone against my instructions to stay away, but I was grateful for the intelligence. Ethan had presented my prototypes to the board as examples of inefficient over-engineering that his new team would streamline. They're already in production, David continued. 3 million units ordered for Q2. Without the patent rights, he trailed off, letting the implications sink in. They'll have to destroy them all or pay me for every single unit. Exactly. I spent hours reviewing every patent filing, every design document. David brought in an intellectual property specialist, Dr. Monica Rodriguez, who testified in cases against Apple and Samsung. This is remarkable, she said, studying the amendment. I've never seen anything quite like it. Most IP agreements favor the company absolutely. This reverses everything. Arthur believed in protecting his people, I said. Well, he certainly protected you. These patents are worth conservatively $200 million in licensing fees over the next decade. That's assuming MedTech is your only licensee. You mean? You could license to their competitors. Johnson & Johnson would pay a fortune for the Flex Stent technology. Boston Scientific would kill for your ablation system designs. The thought hadn't occurred to me. I wasn't just taking back my work, I could fundamentally reshape the entire medical device industry. On day 23, I saw Sarah at Whole Foods. She was buying lunch when I walked past. Her eyes widened, but I kept moving. Then I heard her behind me. Excuse me, you dropped this. She handed me a folded receipt. I nodded, said thank you, and kept walking. In my car, I unfolded it. Sarah's handwriting, they're rushing production. Ethan promised the board cost savings of 30% by cutting your overpriced safety protocols. New team doesn't understand the thermal coefficients. Catastrophe waiting. Stay strong. I burned the receipt in my sink that night. No evidence, no trails. David called on day 28. We're ready. All documents prepared. Courier service on standby. The moment your 30 days expire, 9 a.m. on Friday, we file with the USPTO. What about MedTech? When do they find out? I've scheduled a courier delivery for noon the same day. Gives us 3 hours to ensure all filings are processed before they can react. They'll call immediately. You don't have to answer. In fact, I recommend you don't. Let them stew over the weekend. Realize how completely screwed they are. Monday morning, when their legal team has had time to verify everything, that's when we respond. On day 29, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my home office, looking at the framed photo from my first day at MedTech, 23 years old, fresh from MIT, standing next to Arthur at the company entrance. He'd met me personally, said he'd been following my graduate work on biocompatible polymers. "You're going to change lives," he'd said. I had changed lives. The Flex stent alone had saved thousands of patients from invasive surgery. The microcath had made pediatric cardiac procedures safer. Every innovation, every late night, every breakthrough, I'd given them everything. And they'd valued it all at $3,850. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the preview. Arthur would be proud. No signature, but I recognized the phone number's area code. Martha's Vineyard, where Arthur's widow lived. The clock on my laptop showed 11:57 p.m. In 9 hours and 3 minutes, MedTech Innovations would discover what happened when you tried to save pennies on the person who built your empire. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff, a 2015 Camus I'd been saving, and raised it to Arthur's memory. "Thank you," I whispered, "for seeing this coming." Friday morning arrived gray and drizzling. Perfect pathetic fallacy for corporate disaster. At 8:55 a.m., I sat in David's conference room, watching him coordinate with his paralegal team like a general preparing for invasion. 3 computers open, documents printed in triplicate, a direct line to the USPTO's expedited filing system. "Remember," David said, "the moment that clock hits 9, your termination is final. No takesies backsies." 9 a.m. "File it," David commanded. His paralegal, Jennifer, clicked submit on the electronic filing. Patent reversion claims submitted. All 27 patents listed. Automated confirmation received. Physical copies. Courier left 2 minutes ago for the Denver USPTO office. They'll have hard copies stamped by 9:30. David turned to his intellectual property specialist. "Monica, secondary filings. Cease and desist letters ready for any current production using the patents. Retroactive licensing demands calculated. We're claiming $1.3 million in unauthorized use from the termination date." "Conservative," David noted. "We can always negotiate up." At 11:45, another courier left David's office carrying a single package addressed to MedTech's legal department. Inside formal notification of patent reversion, cease and desist orders, and licensing terms that would make their CFO weep. "They should receive it just as their executives are thinking about lunch," David said. "Ruins appetites wonderfully." At 12:22 p.m., my phone exploded. 14 missed calls in 3 minutes. Texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Emails with subject lines in all caps. I set it to silent and placed it face down on David's conference table. "Let me guess," Monica said, pulling up MedTech's stock ticker. "They've opened the package." We watched the stock price together. Nothing at first news hadn't broken, but at 12:47, a small dip, then another, by 1:15. Trading volume had tripled. "Someone's talking," David observed, "probably calling their biggest investors, trying to get ahead of it." At 2 p.m., my phone rang with a number I recognized: Donald Drake, CEO of MedTech, Ethan's uncle, the man who'd allowed his nephew to destroy everything Arthur built. "Answer it," David said. "On speaker. We're recording." I picked up on the 4th ring. "Hello?" "Natalie. What the hell have you done?" Donald's voice was strained, missing its usual executive polish. "I've exercised my contractual rights. Donald, your legal team can explain the details." "This is extortion. We'll sue you into oblivion." David leaned forward. "Mr. Drake, this is David Mercer, Ms. Brooks' attorney. I'd remind you that this call is being recorded and any threats—" "I know who you are, Mercer." Donald's breathing was audible. "Natalie, we can work this out. This is all a misunderstanding. Ethan made hasty decisions." "Ethan made calculated decisions," I interrupted. "He calculated my final paycheck down to the hour. Remember, $3,850. Silence. Then, what do you want? Check your email. My attorney has sent comprehensive licensing terms. I'm looking at them now, and Jesus Christ. $7 million annually, plus retroactive fees. That's the friends and family discount, David interjected. Market rate would be double. This is insane. Those patents were developed on company time, with company resources, and reverted to my client's ownership the moment her compensation fell below the contractual threshold. It's all quite legal, I assure you. We'll fight this. Please do, David said cheerfully. Discovery would be fascinating. I'm particularly interested in exploring why Ms. Brooks was terminated after 15 years of exemplary service. Age discrimination, gender discrimination, the EEOC would love this case. Another pause. When Donald spoke again, his voice was different, defeated. The board is meeting emergency session at 3. We'll review your terms. Wonderful, I said. Oh, and Donald. You should know I'm in discussions with several of your competitors. They're very interested in licensing opportunities. You wouldn't I? You terminated me to save money. I'm just being financially efficient. Isn't that what Ethan called it? The line went dead. Monica pulled up her laptop. Want to see something beautiful? MedTech's newest investor presentation, posted yesterday. She turned the screen toward us. Slide after slide of projections, all based on products covered by my patents. The new catheter line, the pediatric stent system, the ablation technology they'd planned to launch next quarter. Without your patents, Monica said, they've got nothing in the pipeline for the next 3 years. They're essentially a manufacturing company with no products to manufacture. At 4:30 p.m., a text from Sarah on her burner phone. Board meeting chaos, Ethan escorted out by security, Donald on blood pressure meds, legal screaming about catastrophic oversight, maintenance already removing Ethan's name from his parking spot. I deleted the text, but couldn't suppress a smile. Monday will be interesting, David said. They'll either accept your terms or try to go to war. Either way, you've won. Have I asked, suddenly exhausted. 15 years of my life, and it comes down to this. You didn't choose this, David reminded me. They did. Arthur saw it coming and made sure you'd be protected. As I drove home through Denver's Friday rush hour, I thought about Arthur's words from years ago. If they ever treat you as less than you're worth. Remember, I made sure you'd have options. Options. 27 patents worth of options. $7 million a year worth of options. They'd wanted to save a few $100s on my final paycheck. By Monday, they'd understand what that savings truly cost. The weekend passed in eerie silence. No calls, no texts, no desperate emails. David said they were likely huddled with their legal team, searching for any loophole, any weakness in Arthur's amendment. They wouldn't find one. Arthur had paid the best lawyers in Denver to make it bulletproof. Monday morning, 7:45 a.m. I was having coffee when David called. They've been busy, he said without preamble. Emergency board meeting lasted until 3 a.m. Sunday morning. My source says they went through 4 legal teams' opinions, all saying the same thing: they're screwed. And Donald's been removed as CEO, effective immediately. The board blamed him for allowing Ethan to make personnel decisions without oversight. Ethan's been terminated for cause, no severance, no references, nothing. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, just a cold sense of justice. There's more, David continued. Check your email. I opened my laptop, an email from Richardson & Associates, MedTech's primary law firm, sent at 6 a.m. The subject line, urgent response required by noon. The letter was a masterpiece of legal panic dressed in formal language. They questioned the validity of the amendment, suggested possible fraud, hinted at litigation that would prove costly for all parties. But buried in paragraph 4 was the real message they wanted to negotiate. They're scared, David said. That's why they're sending this at dawn, trying to pressure you with a noon deadline. What's our response? Nothing. We don't respond to their timeline. We set our own. At 9 a.m., the Wall Street Journal posted a breaking news alert. MedTech Innovations faces patent crisis. CEO ousted. The article was sparse on details but noted significant intellectual property disputes and potential disruption to product lines. By 10 a.m., MedTech's stock had dropped 12%. My phone rang. Unknown number, but Denver area code. Ms. Brooks, a woman's voice. Professional but warm. This is Patricia Winters, chair of MedTech's board of directors. I'm hoping we could speak privately. I put her on speaker for David to hear. Ms. Winters. First, I want to apologize. What happened to you was unconscionable. I've spent the weekend reviewing your personnel file. Your contributions, we failed you. You allowed Ethan Drake to destroy careers for sport. Yes, no excuses, no deflection. Donald assured us his nephew was ready for leadership. We trusted family loyalty over competence. That stops now. What do you want? Patricia. To make this right, I've reviewed your licensing terms. They're aggressive, but not unreasonable given the circumstances. However, I'd like to propose something different. David raised an eyebrow at me. I'm listening, I said. Come back. The words hung there. David shook his head vigorously. Come back as Chief Technology Officer, Patricia continued. Full board seat, salary of $400,000 base, plus equity restoration, all your unvested options reinstated, and we'll pay the licensing fees for 2 years while we transition. You want me to return to the company that threw me away? No, I want you to return to a different company. Donald is gone. Ethan is gone. 3 board members who supported them are resigning. We're cleaning house. And if I refuse? A pause. Then we'll pay your licensing fees and watch our competitors eat us alive with your next innovations. Your patents are worth more than money to us. Natalie, they're our survival. I need time to consider. Of course, but Natalie. The announcement about Donald and Ethan goes public at noon. The market will panic unless we can announce new leadership alongside it. After she hung up, David stared at me. CTO, board seat, they're essentially handing you the company. They're desperate. Exactly, which means you can demand anything. I thought about Sarah and my team, about the products still in development, about 15 years of work that shouldn't be destroyed because of one narcissistic nephew's power play. Call Patricia back, I told David. Tell her I'll consider returning under these conditions, CTO reporting directly to the board, not the CEO. Written guarantee that all my former team members are protected from retaliation. Ethan's entire salary budget redirected to R&D. And one more thing. What? A bronze plaque in the main lobby. Arthur Miles's photo and quote, "Innovation belongs to those who create it, not those who calculate its price." David grinned. That's poetic justice. At 11:30 a.m., Patricia called back. All terms accepted. The board voted unanimously. Then I'll see you at noon for the announcement. Natalie. Thank you. You could have destroyed us. No, I corrected. Ethan destroyed you. I'm just choosing to rebuild rather than dance on the rubble. As I drove to MedTech's headquarters, I thought about the last month. They'd tried to erase me, to reduce my worth to $3,850. Instead, they'd activated Arthur's trap, one that turned their greed into my greatest triumph. The security guard at the front desk, Marcus, saw me coming. His face cycled through confusion, fear, and finally relief as I smiled at him. Welcome back, Ms. Brooks, he said quietly. We missed you. The executive conference room had been transformed into a war room. Legal documents covered every surface. Laptops and phones scattered like casualties after battle. Patricia Winters stood at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled back severely. Dark circles under her eyes, testament to the weekend's emergency sessions. Natalie, she extended her hand. Thank you for coming. Around the table sat the remaining board members, MedTech's general counsel, and a PR team that looked like they'd aged 5 years in 3 days. Notably absent Donald Drake's portrait that had dominated the wall for 7 years. Before we discuss anything else, Patricia said, I need you to understand our position. Without your patents, we have approximately 6 weeks of inventory before production stops. Our Q2 commitments would trigger penalty clauses totaling $80 million. Chapter 11 is on the table. You're telling me this to negotiate, I asked. No, I'm telling you this so you understand that your terms, whatever they are, will be accepted. We're not negotiating, we're surrendering. The general counsel, Harold Morrison, slid a document across the table. Your attorney's demands, CTO position, board seat, team protection, budget reallocation, all approved. And the plaque. Patricia actually smiled. Facilities is installing it as we speak. Arthur would have loved the irony. There's one thing we need to discuss, Harold interjected. Ethan? My jaw tightened. What about him? He's threatening to sue. Claims he was a whistleblower. That he discovered financial irregularities in your department, and that's why… Stop. I pulled out my phone. Scrolled to an email from 3 months ago. Ethan Drake, March 15th, 2:14 p.m. Quote, Natalie's department is unfortunately too successful. The board keeps increasing their budget while cutting mine. Need to find a way to reallocate resources. End quote. Harold's face went pale. He put that in writing. He put everything in writing. Narcissists always do. They think they're creating a paper trail of their brilliance. I forwarded the email to Harold. I have dozens more, including one where he brags about calculating my final paycheck to humiliate me. Jesus, someone muttered. That's evidence of intentional malice, Harold said slowly. If this goes to court, he'll be destroyed, Patricia finished. Forward everything to legal. Natalie, we'll handle Ethan. At noon, we assembled in the main lobby. Employees had been summoned for a mandatory all-hands meeting. I stood behind Patricia, watching faces in the crowd. Sarah was in front, tears streaming down her face when she saw me. The entire design team was there, looking like soldiers who'd just learned the war was over. Patricia took the microphone. I'll be direct. Donald Drake has resigned as CEO. Ethan Drake has been terminated for cause. Both decisions were unanimous and immediate. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone actually applauded before catching themselves. MedTech has lost its way, Patricia continued. We forgot that innovation, not financial engineering, is our purpose. We forgot that the people who create are more valuable than those who calculate. We forgot Arthur Miles's vision. She gestured to the wall where maintenance had just finished installing the plaque. Arthur's photograph. The quote underneath exactly as I'd specified. Effective immediately. Natalie Brooks returns as Chief Technology Officer and board member. She'll have full autonomy over product development and innovation. The lobby erupted, not polite corporate applause, but genuine cheering. Sarah actually sobbed. I took the microphone. 31 days ago, this company decided I was worth $3,850. They were wrong. Not because I'm worth more, but because every person who creates, who innovates, who builds something from nothing is invaluable. You cannot calculate creativity. You cannot spreadsheet inspiration. I looked directly at my former team. R&D budget increases 50% effective immediately. The positions eliminated last month are restored, and anyone who was told their ideas were too expensive by previous leadership should resubmit their proposals. After the meeting, Ethan called my personal cell. I let David answer. Mr. Drake? David said smoothly. How can we help you? This is illegal. Ethan's voice was shrill. She manipulated the situation. That amendment was fraud. Mr. Drake, are you recording this call? What, no? Good. Then let me be clear. Your uncle's company exists at Ms. Brooks's pleasure now. One word from her and she licenses everything to Johnson & Johnson. You personally orchestrated this situation with your calculated cruelty. I suggest you disappear quietly. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening. I'm explaining consequences. Oh, and Ethan, that email where you bragged about the $3,850, we have it. Think about how that plays in court. The line went dead. David looked at me. He'll slink away. Trust fund babies always do when reality hits. That afternoon, I walked through R&D. My office, Ethan's former office, had already been cleared, but I didn't go there. Instead, I went to the lab, where Sarah and the team were waiting. We saved your prototype, Sarah said, pointing to the catheter design I'd been working on. Hid it from Ethan's efficiency review. Good. We're filing the patent tomorrow, under the company name, proper procedures. After everything, Sarah asked, you're giving them the patent. I'm not giving them anything. We're building something, together, the way Arthur intended. As the team got back to work, energized and hopeful for the first time in months, I noticed Patricia watching from the doorway. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About coming back. About not destroying us when you could have." I thought about it. Destruction is easy. Anyone can tear down. But building, creating, that's what separates us from people like Ethan. The signing ceremony was scheduled for 3 p.m. in the same conference room where Ethan had terminated me 31 days ago. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Patricia had insisted on formal documentation, every detail witnessed and notarized, as if afraid I might change my mind and take my patents elsewhere. The conference table was cleared except for 3 sets of documents: my employment contract as CTO, the licensing agreement for the patents, and the board appointment papers, each stack thick enough to prove MedTech had learned their lesson about details. Harold Morrison presided over the signing with the gravity of a peace treaty negotiation. "Ms. Brooks, this employment agreement supersedes all previous contracts. Your base salary is set at $400,000 annually, with performance bonuses up to 200%. "The number's not important," I said, picking up the pen. "But for the record, that's significantly more than $3,850. Nervous laughter rippled through the room. The 3 remaining board members watched me sign with visible relief. One of them, Thomas Chen, the only board member who'd questioned Ethan's rapid promotion, actually smiled. "I tried to warn Donald," he said quietly. "Told him nepotism would be our downfall. He said family loyalty mattered more than competence." Family loyalty. I signed the second document. Arthur was family to this company. He built it, and he was loyal enough to protect it, even from his own relatives. The licensing agreement was next, $7 million annually for existing patents, plus 30% of net revenue from any products developed under my leadership. The lawyers had added a clause these terms were locked for 10 years, unchangeable regardless of ownership changes or board composition. "You're being generous," Patricia noted. "Market rate would be double." "I don't need to bankrupt the company to prove a point. I need it healthy enough to develop the next generation of life-saving devices." As I signed the final page, someone knocked on the glass door. Sarah stood outside with a champagne bottle, the entire R&D team behind her. Patricia nodded, and they flooded in, filling the conference room with an energy it hadn't seen in months. "To second chances," Sarah said, raising her glass. "To Arthur Miles," I countered, "who saw this coming and made sure the right person won." We drank, and for a moment, the corporate warfare of the past month faded. These were my people, my team, the ones who actually built things that mattered. Later, as the celebration continued, Patricia pulled me aside. "There's something else. Donald and Ethan's combined severance was supposed to be $12 million. The board voted to redirect it to R&D instead. Poetic justice. That's what Thomas called it. He also suggested we create the Arthur Miles Innovation Fund, an annual grant for revolutionary medical device research, funded by what we're saving from not paying the Drakes." I actually laughed. Arthur would have loved that, his money being used to undo his relatives' damage. At 5:30 p.m., as I finally sat in my new office, the corner suite that had been Donald's, I found an envelope on my desk. Inside, a handwritten note on personal stationery. "Natalie, by the time you read this, you'll have won. I knew you would. I added that clause to your contract 3 months after Ethan joined the company, saw him in action for 5 minutes, and knew what kind of man he'd become. The $4,000 threshold wasn't random. It was calculated to be just low enough that their greed would blind them to the danger. Never apologize for protecting what you've built, Arthur." The letter was dated 2 years ago. He'd left it with someone, instructed them to deliver it when the time came, even in death. Arthur Miles was 3 steps ahead. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number with a photo attached. It was Ethan, standing in what looked like an unemployment office, his face a mask of humiliation. The sender had added one word: karma. I deleted it without response. His suffering brought me no joy. This was never about revenge, not really. It was about value, understanding it, protecting it, and making sure those who create it are never again treated as disposable. As Denver's lights began twinkling in the evening darkness, I stood at the window where Donald Drake once stood, planning his empire. But I wasn't planning an empire. I was planning innovations, breakthroughs, devices that would save lives long after stock prices were forgotten. They'd tried to buy me out for $3,850. Instead, they'd bought themselves a lesson worth millions. Never underestimate the person who holds the keys to your kingdom, and never, ever, underestimate the protective foresight of a founder who loved his company enough to plant a poison pill that only activated when greed overtook wisdom. Arthur Miles had been dead for 2 years, but his final move in the chess game had just achieved checkmate. The irony was perfect in trying to save a few $100s. They'd lost everything, and in losing everything, they'd finally learned the value of what they'd thrown away. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below, and let's connect. If this story of corporate justice resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed karma in the workplace? Let me know in the comments.